I didn't even have to watch his hand this time. I'm Brent Leary.
I'm Paul Greenberg.
We are the CRM players, and if you see us, well, we apologize. But besides that,
Profusely.
you know it's Thursday afternoon. You know what time it is. What time is it?
Well, see, here's the thing. When I was a little boy, if you said, "What time is it?" there was this TV show called the Howdy Doody Show. So you
Oh
would go, "It's
wow.
Howdy Doody time." He was a puppet.
Uh, yeah.
So,
It's not howdy doody time today, though, folks.
no?
It's just us, and now we can officially start because
Yay. English.
it's finished.
Yay.
That's
Hey,
right. We don't
Sven.
have to wonder what
Last
that
week was the most exotic. What was it? Was it
some kind of
Maori or
African
something?
country, I
Yeah,
believe.
Zulu. Was it Zulu or
Yeah, I think it
Maori?
was Zulu.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Zulu.
I think it was.
Sven, he's a smart one. Hey,
Yeah.
Sven.
Good to see you. Good to see you. You know, last week we did the happy hour edition. What are your impressions after a week of taking it all in?
Well, if you remember, you and I basically skipped town for about 15 minutes of it, right? So
That was
let's say
great.
this: it was good enough to be comfortable enough to do that, right? It was
Yeah.
really good. It was a really good episode, and
Funny.
Sven, you're awesome. So they look the conversation was great. I mean, look, you're dealing with in a lot of cases, fairly seasoned industry veterans there, right? And for the most part, not entirely, but for the most part, and everyone had something to contribute. So it worked, and I think we should do more of them. Really,
I think so too. And one of our usuals wasn't even on. Mr. Burke's in there.
yeah.
New
Missed
LinkedIn
him
feature.
until yesterday when we actually saw him on the happy hour.
Like is a suggestion for a new link. They know they now show your live session on your profile, but they were supposed to
I,
do that before. But I guess
apparently, they're doing it now. I guess they started.
Well,
That's what I think he's saying. It's a live one. I mean, it's actually happening.
how do they know we're live though?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't even know we're live. I don't know we're
yeah.
alive for that matter.
Wow, we better stop while we're alive.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we do have a really special guest. Matter of fact, when we posted the promo, it was like the first time where like people were leaving testimonials
I
about
know.
this. I guess
Lengthy testimonials.
it's pretty incredible. I mean, so a lot of people were looking forward to our guest, but we got a couple things to do before we introduce him and bring him on. And I was going to say chop it up, but
Just
yeah,
riff. When we riff
yeah,
with
riff,
our
we'll
man,
riff.
our
We'll riff with
guest.
him. But this week was like a big week, earnings and stuff like that.
I mean, it makes. What are you going to
A
say?
big week for
Yeah,
you.
yeah. Like honestly, the one thing I can guarantee you is, as an industry analyst, and as definitely not a financial analyst, I don't care about GAAP versus non-GAAP income. I do not. I just want to let everyone out there know before we get into anything about earnings. I don't
We need
care.
a non-disclaimer. We
I can't
needed
even
our own
understand half of
non-disclaimer.
I don't even understand some of the acronyms. But
Oh,
so take
luckily, we're
my
not even going to do that. We're not going to get into a lot of that stuff. But I will say this: if you're looking to make stock choices off of what you're about to hear, I would suggest you don't do that. Just
right. Our disclaimer: we have no knowledge. It's not a matter of having insider or no insider knowledge. We have no knowledge at all. Right? We have no knowledge
exactly.
about this stuff whatsoever. Right.
So with that in
So
mind,
that's right.
with that in mind, we're just things that just kind of jumped out with some of these
There were
earnings.
some.
And
There were some.
there were some. So I'm going to go to. We'll start with service now, and I would start with since Sven is there. I would SAP. I would put their earnings up, but they're in like Deutschmarks, and I don't know how to. I don't know what
Well,
that stuff means. So
I think euros. But the thing is that
euros, yeah.
right. But the other thing is SAP emphasized the ERP side of it too, specifically. They were very heavy on cloud ERP
Yeah.
revenues. The
Yeah.
one thing I will say for it, without having to put it up, is that There was some genuinely significant increase in SAP's, let's say, percentage of revenue going to the cloud as opposed to their on-premise licenses. So it was a significant leap for the company. Other than that, I don't see anything.
Yeah, there's Volker. See what Volker is in. Yes,
See,
that's right. All right, Ed. Everybody's already on the lookout. They're probably telling us just get on with it. Bring on Ed. It's not here yet. We'll do that in a couple
they'll tolerate all the other stuff.
Service now. So I mean, we're not going to go through all the slides. I just picked this one slide because I mean they're killing it. They continue to kill it. I think they're on a run rate of about 5.4 billion for the next, running 12 months. So they're clicking on all cylinders. What I thought about this was just looking at this particular slide. It's only a 2-year slide. You look at a Q2 2019 to Q2 2021. But look at the amount of customers that they brought on. It's probably like a 60 or 70% increase over a 2-year period.
I'm not surprised, and I am surprised a little bit in terms of the numbers, only because they've been aside, look, ultimately their original game plan was ITSM. Then they went to ITSM and customer workflows. Now, if you look at its actual report, it's IT workflows, employee workflows, customer workflows, and interestingly enough, and importantly, creator workflows, right? And although their idea of creators, not exactly
the creator economy kind of creator.
No, not the type we're talking about. But so they've obviously expanded their portfolio. So in that regard, I'm not surprised, but the degrees of maturity of each of those 4 segments is substantially different. And so I'm a little surprised in that I don't think, if you go back to their vision and mission, we make the world of work better for people, is what they're claiming. And then this one is just, honestly, is CEO very proud of his company, Bill McDermott, saying this one. Our aspiration is to be the defining enterprise software company of the 21st century. Well, honestly, that's every enterprise software company's aspiration, to be the defining one. But the thing with Bill McDermott is he says it. He'll actually say it out loud. And so, but I don't think, as dramatic and as wonderful a company as they are, and they are an amazing company, like an enterprise version of a unicorn, they don't have all those pieces stitched together on the meta platform they want to do yet fully, which is why I'm a little surprised that they are. So I'm guessing, and this is, again, given I know nothing about finance, that their customer increases are kind of, the best way to describe it, incremental, meaning there's a little of this one and a little of that one and a little of the third one, a little of the fourth one, and there's more of that one and a little less of that one. I mean, it's like that. So there's nothing necessarily all that identifiably consistent about it at this point, other than that they're generally a company everyone has a high regard for.
Yeah, I'll just keep to the high level. 5.5 billion run rate.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was only like a couple of years ago. They were like at 3 billion.
Yep.
I mean, they're killing it.
And
the whole workflow thing. You see their commercials. They're totally all in on this. And remember, they also talked about, was it them that talked about being the platform for platforms?
Yeah, that's I think how they're looking at being the defining company, by being the platform of platforms.
Yeah.
And if you remember that analyst session we had with them a while back, it was months ago, but the thing was interesting was, even though they had that really overdone gigantic platform slide, but on the positive side of that was you could see them being the platform of platforms, meaning there was a real strategy there, and they had the pieces coming together really pretty well. And even though they weren't necessarily fully knit, they were on the right path. And it was really to me, fascinating. That they actually had something behind making that just big statement to be platform of platforms.
Yeah, no, they had a full blown statement. Actually, remember, I think it was the last ServiceNow event that Donahoe was the CEO. Remember we went to that one?
Yeah.
I think we actually did the roving. We did our CRM Playaz interviews there.
Yeah, we did.
Year,
we did 3 of them, I think.
And they were all, I mean, I think that has to be one of the most successful CEO handoffs because they were already up and come. I mean, they were moving big time.
Yes, they were.
So it was like Donahoe really did have them in a nice position. And then, when everybody came in from SAP, because it wasn't just one person. I mean, he brought in a crew. It was like the liftoff. Like Donahoe put them on the launch pad, and then like the SAP connection pushed the button, and they've been moving ever since.
I agree with you. I'm so happy to see the kind of rise that they're making because honestly, you know what? There's thought behind it. Their customers really do love them. They're actually providing exactly what they need to provide, and they've got a strategy to find the things that they don't provide by building out the partnerships and the rest of the ecosystem that they need to be able to provide them. So, I don't foresee them going anything but continually up in the future. I think there's still a lot of this is not fully baked yet, but I think they're well on the way.
Yeah, I think so too. All right, let's move quickly because we spent a lot more time than I was planning on for that one, although it was good stuff. But Microsoft also came out, and it's a little blurry, but look at the numbers, and these are like numbers in billions. So their productivity and business process is 14.7 billion, intelligent cloud 17.4 billion, more personal computing 14.1 billion, total revenue for the quarter, and that's just for the quarter, 46 billion, and even the net income for the quarter is 16.5 billion. So just think about what we just talked about ServiceNow and how great they're doing and how they're on track for 5.6 or whatever it is billion in revenue for the year. And then you look at what Microsoft is doing for the quarter.
Look, the only thing you can ever say about Microsoft is it's Microsoft, right? I mean, that's pretty much all you can say. They're like, they have this unique thing they do that they just go ahead and do it. Like if you look at it, they're really pushing intelligent cloud, and that's Azure, and that they were third in line or second in the pecking order. Now they're first. They've surpassed AWS. They've surpassed Google Cloud. In fact, I guess they're about equal. And I guess to combine Google and AWS is a tiny, tiny bit more than the singular Azure Intelligent Cloud revenues. I mean, they're just amazing. Now they're going to Windows 11, which is in preview, getting really good reviews.
Yeah, no, the only thing, the intelligent cloud is where Azure is. I really wish they would officially break it out because I would love to make sure we're doing an apples to apples comparison between Azure and AWS. I don't know, if they are breaking it out somewhere that they're not showing here, but all I see is the intelligent cloud number. I don't see the actual specific Azure, although we see the percentage growth. We don't see the actual number that is Azure versus the whole intelligent cloud, which is Azure and other things.
Yeah,
that's the only thing
I'm with you. I am completely with you.
Because I don't know. It would be really good to see if they are, that far ahead. Or I want to just see the actual number for Azure and the actual number for AWS, so I can feel comfortable in saying, one is bigger than the other. Because right now, I hear that AWS is number one and Azure is number two. But then I've also heard, like you were saying, Azure is actually overtaking it. I don't know. It'll be nice. Somebody out there let us know.
Bob Evans
Satya
does. I think he knows. Yeah, Satya,
Satya is listening. Yeah.
Could you drop the comment in LinkedIn, Satya, please?
Speaking of do I have this? Speaking of LinkedIn, because they did break out well, they gave us a percentage. Look at how fast LinkedIn revenue is growing. And that's mostly ads.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they even say it. Driven by strong advertising demand in the marketing solutions business. 97% up. Wow.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's on the strength of ads.
That still seems to be a separate company to me every time I think about it, though. It's like,
yeah, you almost don't think about, oh yeah, they are with Microsoft now.
Yeah, I don't even include them when I think about Microsoft, even though obviously we need to. But I don't, to be honest. It's like there's Microsoft, and then there's LinkedIn, and then Microsoft, I guess, owns LinkedIn, but you'd never know it. Well, I guess we do know, because we did ask Satya to drop the comment in LinkedIn and not on Twitter.
We'll keep an eye out for that. And the last thing with Microsoft, because this is kind of under the radar, or part of it is, and part of it really should stay under the radar because the numbers aren't good. All right, the gaming numbers, and this is something I know you're focusing on, the gaming stuff. That's growing. Are you surprised it's only 11%?
Yeah, I am. I don't, honestly, when it comes down to Xbox, PS, the console games and the PC gaming world, I actually think Microsoft doesn't do a great job with actually promoting Xbox the way it needs to be promoted. And they're outgunned by Sony and PlayStation in terms of at least competitive, directly competitive gaming. And the PC gaming industry is growing by percentages much bigger than that, with Steam and Valve and all these other companies doing that. In fact, Steam's coming out with a device that you can play Steam games on the device, meaning a console-like, Nintendo Switch-like game. And they're literally, the device is so hot, it's not even out yet, that people are selling, in effect, places in line for the device for $5,000 just for the place in line, which means there are some big suckers out there with a lot of money. But see, that Microsoft does not do I think they underestimate what they have with the Xbox, and while they produce good hardware for sure, they don't really do a very good job marketing it the way they should, and PlayStation kills them on that level.
Yeah, just catching up on some of the comments here. The other thing to point out on here, Surface revenue declined 20%. Now,
yeah,
think about that, and then think about what Apple did this week.
Yep,
$81 billion in revenue for this quarter, last quarter. That's $81 billion in one quarter.
Yeah,
and $21 billion in net income. So net income is $21 billion a month. That's, and why is Surface well, we can't go in that because we do have a guest, but you gotta wonder what's going on with Microsoft on the Surface division when you hear like Apple is just killing it with devices. And then search advertising. Look, that's pretty good growth, but Microsoft search, the numbers are not nearly, the revenue numbers are not nearly as big as what's going on with Facebook and Google. And Facebook and Google are growing about that fast, if not faster, with bigger revenue numbers than Microsoft is growing at a much, much, much lower number.
Well, honestly, I think last but not least on Microsoft, I do want to, before we go to Ed, I do want to go briefly into Adobe because it's one very important thing I noticed there.
Okay, go ahead.
So just the last thing on Adobe. Adobe's really become very interesting in terms of what it is. If you look at, it's not so much the total revenue numbers, the breakdown of revenue for them for this quarter, which was, and these are rough numbers I'm just describing, but they still have their three distinct clouds, which they're stitching into a single platform, and that is Creative Cloud, Document Cloud, and Digital Experience Cloud. Digital Experience Cloud for the quarter has reached about $1 billion, a little less than that. Creative Cloud's roughly 2.8 billion, and Document Cloud's a kind of relatively paltry 400 million. But the interesting thing is that if you actually read through the earnings report, and this is one it was a 19-page document, but there's some pages really worth looking at in there. You really do see how they said the most significant growth in Experience Cloud which they claimed was kind of off the charts. I forget their exact descriptor, but it was pretty like extraordinary. Was AEM, Experience Manager, which
Really?
if you think about it is, well, here's the thing. Well, in terms of the Experience Cloud, but here's the thing. That's the one closest tied to Creative Cloud, right? By far, meaning, it's tied between the actual product, Sensei, and Photoshop and other, it's tied super closely to content creation and consumption. And Adobe's positioned right now, if they can get the distribution part right, which they don't have yet, but if they can get the distribution part right, to just blow the doors off in the coming 2 or 3 years, based on even the movement in revenue and the escalation and elevation of what's creating that, and with the strong foundation of Creative Cloud. So, but they're going to have to get the distribution piece right, which they don't have, and that's the omni-channel so-called. But it's more than that. They have to get out of omni-channel thinking and start thinking content distribution, and they'll be in a much better place in thinking of the medium that they actually can provide. And I think in their case, it's just potentially explosive. And I just wanted to reference that because I just thought it was really important to watch Experience Marketing Club. But the AEM thing is what caught my attention.
Yeah, that's a good catch. I got to look at that. One quick thing before we go to our guests, just to kind of top off what I was talking about with ads. Facebook also came out, and check this out. This is their daily active users, and they do Facebook daily active users. So this is just for folks on Facebook, not on Instagram and all that other stuff that they own. Just daily active users on Facebook. They are almost at 2 billion people.
Jesus.
Every day.
It's 28% of the world's population.
And then they have, this is if you go to monthly users, it's 2.8. It's almost 3 billion that come on at least once a month.
Unbelievable.
And their net income is 10 billion off of that. And their revenue is 30 million or almost 30 million. And now, and all that, like 98% of that revenue is ads.
Yeah.
So when you think about how fast they're growing and how much the market they already have, and then you look at what Microsoft is doing for search, it's wow, it's a tale of two cities.
And last to that, it's no surprise why Oracle and the other companies and Salesforce and others are all jumping into the advertising space now. They're all going there.
Oh, real quick. When you look at family daily active, so any person using any one of their Instagram or WhatsApp, it's almost, it is all 2.75 billion people every day using one of those.
Wow.
Messenger, WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram.
Boy, okay,
that's a juggernaut. I mean, all they have to do is figure out ways to monetize that and not be too creepy about it. But
all right,
that might be the biggest problem right there. Who knows? All right. I'm going to let you introduce our guest because you know him well.
All right, let's bring this man in. There he is, one of my favorite human beings on the planet, Ed Thompson.
I'll line myself up. Hello, Paul.
Hey, Ed.
I'm fully branded.
So I got to tell everybody, well, everybody knows you literally probably generated I'm not kidding, the single most excitement about the Playaz in years when it was announced that you were coming on. I mean, you literally should go to, where was it, on LinkedIn where that Rob's thing was? Okay, just go to LinkedIn and look at some of the comments about you. And then we got comments. Oh, we got comments everywhere. I mean, ranging from, like, Martin Schneider had a comment where he said, oh, Ed's coming on. I miss briefing Ed. I really love that guy. Things like that. But you generated so much excitement for good reason. So for those of you who don't know Ed Thompson, he's literally, I would call one of the few people at Gartner who is so distinguished that he could literally use the title of emeritus and still be there. Right. And so, right. So
he's old.
I met Ed in 2003, in St. Paul de Vence. I always say Vence, de Vence, where we were both speaking at this Unisys resort. That they had this little nice resort, and this guy Ed Thompson gets up to speak from Gartner, and I'm going, oh, that should be interesting. And then he blew me away, like completely blew me away. I think there were like 4 speakers: me, Ed, this other Gartner analyst who was more security focused. He left since. I can't think of his name now. He's written a book, and I know his name if I hear it. And then Steve Kenny, who was on security, and it was the 4 of us, right? And Ed gave this astounding discussion on what became CX. Oh, I remember it like it was yesterday. And well, I'm going to tell you one other brief story about Ed, so you get a measure of this guy. I was one of the lucky analysts who actually was able to speak at a Gartner conference who didn't work at Gartner. And I think I spoke at 4 ultimately. And the first one I spoke at was at the Power Breakfast. And it was on new business models for the 21st century. And I didn't know that Gartner kind of ranked the speeches. Like there was like, I think it was 126 people speaking at that conference. And I get a call from Pascal Winkel, who was running the events at the time. And he says, we got your ranking. And I said, what are you talking about? And he says, you rank your speakers. I said, he said, you came in second. And I immediately said, being a New Yorker, who beat me? I didn't even say thanks. I came in second. I said, who beat me? He said, Ed Thompson. And I went, oh, I can live with that. Right. That's how good this guy is. He's the most distinguished analyst in the world when it comes to CX. And he knows the markets. He knows the strategies. He knows the frameworks. He knows the whole thing. He's also an incredibly good human being and really funny guy, and says things that are straightforward and droll, and at the same time make complete sense. Like, if you don't want it to be known when you're on the internet, then don't write it on the internet. I still remember that one too. Right. So Ed, welcome to the Playaz.
Thank you. That's I'm going to leave now because that was so nice.
Yeah, I was about to say, good luck on the rest of the show. You have a standard that no human can live up to.
Exactly. I'm screwed now. I've got to go. Good to see you again. It's great. Thank you, Brett.
I know. It's been a while, man. So let's just start on this subject.
Yeah, wait a minute. First, before you start, somebody put a comment. I guess they're trying to figure out, is that the guy you're talking about?
Yes, it would be John.
No, it wasn't. No, it may not have been even security. I can picture the guy as a big, kind of burly guy. He seemed sort of formal, but really wasn't. Really a good guy. And he wrote a book, Buchanan? I don't know. It'll come to me.
James? Was it James?
No, definitely wasn't.
Yeah, you mentioned I've never done anything with a security thing before, but as soon as you mentioned it, I went, oh yeah, that's right. They had the 2 themes. They had the 2 topics.
Yeah.
Security and us. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that was you and me.
Little swimming pools and stuff in some
nice little town too.
Yeah, the good old days.
Yeah, it was one of those. So, what's your general impression on where? Look, CX is like bandied about everywhere and misused most of the time, and obviously you can be as usually brutal and blunt and in your nice way, as you always are. But what's your take on the way the market's going? What's real? What isn't? What's hype? What's just the story? Tell the story as you see it now. As you see it now.
I'll summarize it a few ways. So last year we got a hold of a bunch of CX leaders and said, non-IT, most of them, and said, what can you tell us what projects you're working on, and give us a list. And then, because we did it about 6-7 years ago, we asked them some technology. We ended up with a list of 10, and we kept finding the same 10 technologies at the top. That's a bit boring. So we said, let's just give them an open-ended list and just ask them any old tech and just get them a big old list. We got 105 different technologies. So what we can take away from that is, including 5G and IoT and all sorts of stuff. So and CRM mentioned a few times. But so the take you get from that is you can use anything to improve the customer experience, any tech you like. So what we get asked all the time is, well, how big is the CX market? My answer normally is, how big do you want it to be? You can make it, I don't know, $1 billion or $1 trillion. What would you like? And they go, well, that's too big. That's too small. What number do you want me to tell you? And usually they mean whatever we're doing is CX. So there, it's. I made lists of vendors who call themselves CX vendors. I got to about 800 different vendors saying I'm a CX vendor, and I thought, well, I give up now. That's enough. That's enough. It's personalization, it's CRM, it's analytics tools, it's content management, it's journey stuff, it's voice of the customer, it's survey tools, it's market research stuff. It's just anything to get your hands on, really. Portals and DXPs, as we call them. So anyway, the bottom line is lots of different tech. So it's kind of abused. It doesn't mean anything. And the clients, the first thing they ask is, they go, yeah, we want to do some CX stuff, and then you start talking technology. You go, what does that actually do? Which kind of CX is that? And so you immediately throw the CX word away. But I think this is the bigger story. If you survey chief execs and board of directors, we've done this last year. They tell us that CX is even more important than it's ever been, and they really, really care. they say they care. I don't believe it. It's they don't seem to demonstrate that when the way they went. Anyway, they say they care, and they are putting money in it, and they're appointing more and more of these CX leaders. We've given up counting, but we think there's at least 10,000 of them in the big companies. And so they say they care, and they're putting money in that direction. And particularly, they're talking about digital transformation. You ask them about digital transformation, digital business. You ask them, what outcome are you trying to achieve? It's normally customer experience, somewhere in there. A third of all digital transformation projects, the primary goal is to improve customer experience. So clearly it matters. It's a big deal. It's a big deal to the board, big deal to senior execs, and people are spending money on it. They want to spend money on improving customer experience. My personal belief, this is my kind of story on the CX thing, is that none of them really care about CX. It's just that all other means of differentiation failed, and they were left with one left, which was we try to have lower prices, we try to be more efficient, we try to have better products. We got copied, imitated, and globalized, and we're left with trying to improve the customer experience. Is really hard. So let's say that. So what you end up with is, you ask them now, you get like 80-90% will say we're differentiating on having a superior customer experience. So everybody's trying to do it. There's one thing left to do. So the consequence is, it's a fantastic subject to research, because it's just unlimited and isn't going away. And the final kind of opening comment is to say that I looked, you'll like this. So last June, I looked, where's CRM sitting in the search terms coming to Gartner? It's 29th. It's back at 9th now, CRM. And if you look for CX, unfortunately, some people say CX and some say customer experience. But if you got those two and you put them together, it's 7th. So it's about 7th. And by the way, Gartner has terms like Magic Quadrant, of course, and Hype Cycle, and kind of all the Gartner. So strip those out. It's probably in the top 6 or 7 things coming into Gartner. I mean, security and things like that are quite important to IT, but it's right up there at the top. And if you ask customer service leaders, it's number 1. And marketing leaders, number 1. Chief execs, about 3rd or 4th. Sales directors, 2nd or 3rd after growth. So it's right up there on all their agendas, even coming up in the HR directors' surveys now. So bottom line, it ain't going anywhere. It's quite a good thing to research.
So okay, so here's the thing. So I look around and I see all these, to your exact point, all these companies claiming CX and not really being that, or not. I see, to your point, that there are 10 trillion vendors who are claiming to be CX when they're really not, for the most part. I mean, one of my prevailing comments is, there's no such thing as a system of experience, right? Right. You have systems of engagement for a reason, because those are bidirectional communication systems that allow you to capture, which is why customer engagement does have systems. But customer experience really, at its most fundamental level, meaning how a customer feels about a company over time kind of level, there's no technology that enables that.
Not
right. Really. So the question then becomes, there are technologies that, if you're going to call them CX, they could be called CE just as well. But the question is, you have companies, of course, like Oracle CX and SAP CX and so on.
Rebranded CRM.
Right. Well, that's the thing. I mean, that's the other side. CRM, to me, just sadly, because we wanted it to be much more, has become kind of an operational core for all this. And it's valuable and important, but it's not that. CX is a much broader mission. So when you're looking at it from the more, let's say, the outside of the technology side and outside of the vendors, and you're looking at it more from a strategic direction and a behavioral, a look at behavior, and, let's call it the right brain. How do you even present that? I mean, I know how you do it because I read you, but how do you present that to the world generally, because you look, you're one of the people who has the gravitas and the trust of people when it comes to what you explain CX to be. So if you're looking at it purely, let's say, strategic and definitionally, what are you telling people?
Well, definitionally, we tricked around the definition last year, but essentially, what we're looking at was what are companies actually doing, as opposed to what they say they're doing. And we chuck it in 3 buckets and say, look, they're trying to understand customers better. They're listening and trying to analyze and trying to collect feedback and trying to get to know customers better. So there's that part of it. Then there's the strategy execution stuff, the doing. What are you actually going to do about it? And then there's the stuff where you say, okay, well, somewhere in this, there's people involved, human beings. So there's all the coordination and governance and culture change topics, which are pretty heavy lifting kind of stuff. And I did a thing last year where I got fed up because every 3 days I get a new customer experience strategy hits my desk, and I read it, and it's just mostly gibberish. There's 2 things you see. You see a vision statement with "We're going to be great," and
right, exactly.
And then what happens? And then what magic happens? And then so that's one thing. And the other one, you get this detailed roadmap plan rolling out some technologies, which is you kind of go, okay, that's the detailed roadmap. Where's the actual strategy? So I put that as a good colleague of mine called Dave Aaron, one of the I always say in Gartner there's about 25 really bright people. I'm not one of them. I'm just a fast follower, but he's one of the really bright ones. And he read 100 books on strategy, which I was quite impressed with, because I've never read 100 books. I'd give up life trying to do that. But he read them over about a decade, including all the Japanese and Chinese ones on art of war and all that kind of stuff. And he summarized a little book called The Essence of Strategy, which I really like, because it's kind of like saves you reading. If you ever want to read about strategy and you don't want to know about it, just read his book, 60 or 80 pages long, tiny little book, summarizes 100 books on the subject, nails it down. Anyway, on my summary of that was to say, all right, he's basically saying 3 things. You've got to say in the strategy, where are we going to play, how are we going to win, what do we need to win? That's it. And if you dig around strategy books and look at them, that comes up pretty. So I wrote one called The Essence of Customer Experience Strategy and said, if you've got these things, that's a strategy. And I was talking to a client and I said, can you give me an example? I said, I'll give you an example, a really, really basic one. So a couple of years ago, well, longer than that, maybe 3-4 years ago, I'm in Dubai. And I'm talking to this guy from a bank, and he's running the CX program there, and we're having a good time. And we finished the call, and I helped with the meeting, and we finished the conversation. And he said, in passing towards the end, he said, I used to work at Emirates Airlines. I said, oh, Emirates. Well, that's cool. So I said, did you work on the CX program? And he goes, yeah. And he said, do you want to hear how that all got going? I said, yeah. Didn't Emirates end up being best airline in the world or something? Long haul passenger. He goes, yeah.
Right.
He said, I was there. And I said, what do you mean you were there? He said, well, one day the Emir calls us in. He calls in about 10 of us. And the Emir said, look, in front of me, I have long haul passenger magazine surveys. And we're number 6 in the world. And I want to be number 1. And you 10 guys are all expats. So you're not actually from Dubai. So, I control whether you live here. So there's a bit of a threat there. And he goes, there's a big bonus for you if you can get us to number 1. So it's Friday. So the weekend starts now. And so I want you to go away and come back on Sunday and tell me how much money you need and how long. And they came back and said, we want $1 billion for the CX program. And we want 3 years. And he goes, okay, there's $1 billion, 3 years, go. If you don't succeed, you're not living here anymore. If you succeed, you get the bonus. So, but anyway, you sit there and think about it. But after you think about it, you go, right, it's long haul passengers, not short haul. So it's very clear who the customers are. So where are we going to play? We know what it is. How do we know we won? Well, we know we won because the magazine's going to tell us we're number 1 in the world, those magazines. So that's pretty clear. Then what resources do we need? Well, you 10 are doing it, so we know who's doing it. And then it's $1 billion in 3 years. So it's actually a strategy in a little story of about 30 seconds. But I remember thinking, how rare is it to hear that when you talk to clients? Because a lot of times, waffle, fantastic vision, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, cut to the chase. How are you going to be number 1? Or what's your ambition? How are you going to get there? And the good companies, like I was talking to one, that NRMA, which is a fantastic Australian. It's like the Automobile Association of Eastern Australia. Anyway, fantastic. If you talk to the head of CX, they're fantastic. Strategy, brilliant. Are they good? Oh, they're good. And it's just very, very cool. And they got a strategy and they got the team and they're doing it. And you sit there and go, this is what good looks like, as opposed to what I mostly see, which is not good. But when you see good stuff, you think this is just fabulous, and you see the effects of it over time. So it can happen, but it's rare.
Do you find any vendors who you think are actually producing high quality technology, whether they call it CX or not, I don't care really, but whether it's technology that genuinely is supportive of, let's say, execution of strategies like that and programs associated with that? Are there any of them you think?
Well, I think
against the claims they're making that they're actually doing a good job.
I think the ones that are most closely associated with real CX stuff, I think they probably put in 3 buckets. Maybe I'd say the VOC guys, or the survey guy, the voice of customer guys. But the reason I say that, I was having a call earlier with a company who are very smart. Unfortunately, I won't be able to name them this time, but they're very smart, and they were describing what they're doing, and I was like. They said, what we want you to tell us is what's the innovation going on in the CX, in the voice of customer space. And I've been doing a bit of work on that. So I've been talking about Medallion, Qualtrics, and what's it, Momentive now that SurveyMonkey's become. And they've all renamed themselves. Survey Gizmo, it was now Alchemia, and Vision Critical is now a leader. And everyone's renamed and rebranded. Forrester, confirm it's now Forrester. So it's changing quite dynamically. A lot of VC questions and private equity calls coming to Gartner about it. And I said, well, what's really going on there is, everyone thinks they're survey tools. And do you realize that Qualtrics and Medallion have got 2-3% of the data in their databases, and their core data model is direct survey data? That's not what they're doing. They are collecting that stuff. That's what they're known for. But what they're actually doing is sucking in lots of social media data. So they're collecting a lot of indirect data. And they're looking at call logs and text analytics stuff. And then they're also pulling in location data, but they're also pulling in transactional stuff out of point of sale system. So it's behavioral data they're looking at. And then you sort of go, okay, and then they're collecting it through 30 different channels. And then they're putting it together, and they're not just doing the descriptive, diagnostic stuff. They're doing they're predicting what NPS score you're going to give without you even giving it. And then they're pumping that out to Salesforce screen, telling you, if we were to survey that Paul, he'll give us a 6 out of 10. And then it prescribes what action to take with you to do it. So when you describe that, and then you say, or give another data point, which I find fascinating. If you talk to the biggest company in the world, knowing this is a big supermarket chain, you can probably work out there. They've got 2 million employees, so you can probably work out there. Anyway, they've got 385,000 users of a VOC tool. Sorry, 285,000 users of a VOC tool. So it's not 5 guys in a box doing some analysis. This is operational execution, triggering actions. And so you're a store manager in Arkansas, and you're getting a daily report telling your guys on the bread aisle to brush the crumbs up because yesterday wasn't good enough. So it's like you're getting the feedback and taking action really, really fast. So that stuff, if it's done properly, that's actually pretty serious stuff, what's going on in that area. The one I like now is the best story, and this is on the open space, so I'm allowed to talk about it. But if you look at Qualtrics, Uber uses Qualtrics. And they'll talk about something often called auto loop or zero touch. And what that means is, instead of the closed loop stuff you get with feedback from customers, which is, you trigger a customer service person to call the customer back, say, sorry, you gave us 1 out of 10. Sorry, you're really unhappy. What can I do to fix it? They rant a bit. You do something to fix it, hopefully. What happens now is you just trigger another application. So the example in Uber is, and this is true, if you get out of an Uber and it says, what feedback, and you write 1 out of 10, driver just made a racist comment at me, it shuts the Uber driver down. It uses keywords to shut them down instantly. So you're using key trigger words to shut the driver down. And now, of course, the driver has a comeback. So, of course, they'll then survey the driver and ask the driver, what actually happened? Wait a minute, he made a racist comment at me. So then the question is, what's the trade-off? But the point is, there's key words they're using there. Or another example, you're in a telecoms situation, and you send a message in saying, my phone's not activated. And well, you could call back and say, oh, I'm very sorry about that. Let me activate your phone. Well, that's nice. What better would be just to activate the damn phone and then call me up and say, it's already activated. So what's going on is, it's kind of, these tools are now integrated like a couple of hundred different applications. They're triggering actions through APIs in an operational way. So, and that's not quite how SAP painted it when they bought Qualtrics, but that's essentially what's really going on out there. These tools are like big and powerful when they're put in properly like that in these big organizations. So I think that's one. I think another couple I'd pick would be the personalization stuff. I think when personalization is done well, when they're using clever forms of personalization, I think you get some really interesting impacts on customer experience. It seems to be a pretty good evidence that's a very powerful area. And then the other one, which this ties back to the channel stuff. So I'm very interested in moving towards where the customer is. What I mean by that is all these people have put out these apps, and what's the average app use is 1.03 times. So basically most people use them one. And so most apps you never use twice. So you're a life insurance company. What are you doing with an app? You're never going to open the app. You're not until you need to make a claim, but then it's too late. So life insurance apps, ridiculous. Some of the apps that have been produced. But some of the apps are heavily used. So what do we actually use? We use Facebook. You were just talking about them. What do we use? Facebook. We use WhatsApp. We use Instagram. That's where you need to be. You've got to be in with the messaging applications. So the self-service, go to where the customer is. Don't go running around saying, please log in with all your passwords into my stupid portal. Go to where the customer is and then help the customer there. So go where they are. So I think there's a lot going on in the self-service messaging, fitting in with where the customer is and reaching out there. It's quite powerful and having a short term. So I'll give you an example. Talking to an insurance company the other day, I think a Czech insurance company, if I remember rightly, in the Czech Republic. What they've done is they've taken an RPA tool, stuck it together with a CRM tool. I think it's Salesforce, can't remember now. And then they've stuck it together with WhatsApp. And so what they're doing is they're triaging a car crash. So you have a car crash and it goes, right, let's set up a community of the drivers, the insurance company, and anybody else involved, like the breakdown vehicles, in a WhatsApp group and have a 3-way, 5-way conversation until we resolve the claim. And funny enough, you get it done a heck of a lot quicker and a lot cheaper, and everyone's much happier. So you sit there and go, wow, RPA, a bit of WhatsApp, and a bit of CRM stuck together. So why isn't everybody doing that? Why is my insurance claim seems to take forever and involves 6 weeks of calling backwards and forwards to a contact center who doesn't know what the hell's going on every time I call them? So I think the point I would make is there's some cool things going on in those areas, which I would genuinely say this is real CX stuff.
That kind of blew my mind, what you just were saying. I didn't even realize those things were out there. I haven't seen anything that qualified, I'll call it. Brent,
there's good stuff going on out there, yeah. Some people are doing good. Some people's good. We can all dream it will happen for us one day.
So that actually brought a couple of things, questions. One, because of what happened with the pandemic, you've had this direct to consumer, and you've had the impact of supply chain on the customer experience. How are companies addressing, the supply chain customer experience relationship now in the midst of this? And also, things like, the direct to consumer and the contactless. How has all of that changed the game, if it has changed it, for companies when they're looking at what to do about CX?
Well, I think there was last year, March, April, it was kind of interesting. I was actually, one of the things you find amusing is where I poke fun at my own company. So we had like forecast CRM market last year in January, 15% growth, April -5%. September -3%, not so bad. December +3%. Final published numbers +12%. So we kind of went, whoa, no. It was all okay. Fine. So we followed the kind of we were just doing the forecast based on the economics. Well, shortest recession of all time, 2 months in the US. So in fact, a comment on the pandemic thing. It's very interesting now that yes, it's a K-shaped recovery. In other words, some people did really well, some did really bad. But it's kind of interesting. Many of the clients I'm talking to, their problem right now is not unemployment. It's not. Their problem is inflation. And they can't get anyone. It's full employment. They just cannot get resources now. The skills they want, it's just killing them. And so it's weird that it's almost the polar opposite 12 months ago. It's like, now we have a problem. We can't recruit anyone. We can't get hold of the people we need. We've got a skill shortage. We have to pay through the odds to get anyone with the right skills. So it's kind of interesting. I know it's very industry specific and very geography specific, but really, really weird when you think 12 months ago. But anyway, going back to the supply chain thing. The supply chain thing, I think it's kind of interesting. It takes a long time to fix. So, okay, let's not make so much stuff in China. Let's not make semiconductors quite so much in China. How long does it take to make new chips? We're going to have a shortage. Yeah, Intel's telling us we're going to have a shortage for quite some time, right through next year as well. So it's they'll start making factories in Europe and start making more factories back in the US, and stuff will shift away from China in terms of manufacturing. I'm sure but it takes just a heck of a long time to fix that sort of stuff. It's just not easy to change it, but they're all got plans on it. Yeah, it's all trying to make it more resilient. In fact, the term is a book published in 2012 called anti-fragile. Worth a read, actually. And one of our guys leapt onto it last year. Actually, several guys leapt on it. It's written in 2012, but what it basically says is, look, some companies are fragile when they hit a big, disruption, uncertainty. Let's call it a pandemic. And they're fragile. They don't do well. And some are resilient. They bounce back. They recover. They survive. Anti-fragile is they thrive. So you go, who was thriving last year? Well, it was Salesforce. It was Adobe did all right. They didn't do badly, but actually, in our the guys who did really well, obviously Facebook and stuff like that. But if you look at the ones who did best in the world, it was like obviously Zoom. I think Zoom was number one in the world, most successful company last year. But it's Shopify. It's all our friends.
Yeah,
Microsoft did very nicely, and Facebook. It's all our space. I was looking at. I had a quick look earlier to say, all right, of the CRM guys we traditionally look at, who did well last year? It's like Shopify, Twilio, Intrahive, Freshworks, ServiceNow, HubSpot, Qualtrics, Zoho, Medallion, Zendesk, Hootsuite, Sprinkler. All did way better than Salesforce. And in fact, if you take the Salesforce non-organic stuff out, the inorganic acquisition stuff, the velocity stuff, you go, oh, actually, there's a bunch who did a lot better. So actually, Salesforce's problem is not Salesforce, it's not SAP and Oracle and Pega and those kind of guys. It's that their challenge is all those mid-tier guys specializing who grew like crazy last year and did really well. And to make it worse, you look at Qualtrics' latest results. Well, they were up 55% last quarter, was it, or 49 and 55 the quarter before? So these guys are killing it. And none of them are going, what the hell?
Yeah.
Why are they head-to-head with Salesforce? But anyway, the point I want to make is some companies did extremely well last year. Yeah. And the impression is, well, they were anti-fragile, weren't they? So how did they were they just lucky? And I said, well, some of them were just in the right sector, but a lot of it was not. They were actually well organized. They were listening to customers. They're well connected, good sales forces. They had people everyone started working at home in a week. They were all working from home. So they were, quick to start their work from home stuff. They weren't heavily capital intensive. There's a load of good things about them that make them very anti-fragile. But the bit I'm interested in is the customer relationship bit. In other words, what was anti-fragile about the customer relationships? And that's really kind of interesting. Like, do they have a diverse, not a diversity policy, but are they diverse in the way they think? Do they deal with customers or not customers? Do they talk to non-customers, and do they talk to ex-customers, or do they just focus on customers? So there's a lot of interesting attributes. We're kind of trying to nail down what are the attributes of anti-fragile businesses who did well last year.
Well, actually, to that point, and it's an interesting. It's almost like I would call it a category, but they're not really categories. And they're niche, but they're not niche. They're really just, to your point, specialists, right? They're specific. Yeah. So there are companies like, say, Clarabridge or Thunderhead or those kind of companies who are right. And both of them did extremely well last year. And even Thunderhead, when they, moved on from the OEM stuff with Salesforce, still blew the doors off. And so how do you think about companies like Thunderhead or like Clarabridge, because they both do things that really nobody else does. At the same time, there's a market for both of them. Could they have grown even more? Sure, but there's limitations just in size alone that prevented them from doing even more. But how do you think about those? Well, first of all, what do you think of Clarabridge and Thunderhead? And secondly, what do you think of those kind of companies who fill a role but aren't the full gamut, but have ecosystems that they can be part of?
Well, I'm going to step back a bit and say, I'll use a story. I'll use a Boston bank as an example, Boston-based bank. So I'm talking to them about a year and a half ago, and they moved off Siebel. So I said, how long is it taking me? 5 years. I said, 5 years? Wow. Why did it take 5 years? And he goes, because we customized it a bit. And I said, how much do you customize? He said, well, about 50-60% of the code was not Siebel. And so basically we used it as a development platform. We just stuffed things on top of it until it was unmovable. We had it there for more than 15 years anyway. And it's taken us 5 years to get off. And we don't want that to happen again. So I said, so what are you doing this time? They said, well, obviously we're still going to configure and customize. They went through a big thing and they chose Salesforce. And they said, but the principle this time, they said we spent 3 years just removing stuff from Siebel. And then we started with the Salesforce project and then try to keep Salesforce to be a CRM thing doing what CRM things should do in sales, marketing, customer service. And so then what it means is we've decided not to try and customize as least we possibly can. So I said, you're going to customize. So yeah, we have. I said, but the bottom line is we haven't got 150 custom objects now. We've got 20 or something, or 15 or 20. I said, okay, that's pretty good. And I said, what does that mean for integration? I said, oh, that's kind of interesting. We had Siebel integrated to 15 systems. Now we've got the new one integrated to 55. And I was like, okay, that's a lot of additional applications. I said, how many App Exchange partners have you got in there? I said, oh, we got about 21 applications from App Exchange. And I said, what have you custom built? I said, we've custom built 3 specific applications, which we had embedded in Siebel. We pulled them out and built them from scratch. But we don't want them to be, we couldn't find anything, so we built them ourselves. One of it is a very fancy pricing thing. But anyway, the bottom line from all this conversation was I thought, that's kind of interesting. And that's what happens if you try to keep the thing doing what it's supposed to do and not let it kind of explode on you. And they said, we know we're going to fail. We know, we'll slowly go to hell in a handcart in the next 15 years when we have this thing. But the bottom line is we don't want to spend 5 years getting off Salesforce when the time comes, which we figure will be 15 years from now. So I said, okay. So we started going through what are these add-on things you bought? And they're kind of quite niche. I mean, they're things like, Thunderhead and Clarabridge, and they're things that are good at specific areas where you kind of go, well, Salesforce can do that, but is it the best? And what they're all doing is go, well, should we do it with Salesforce or not? Customer journey analytics. Maybe we kind of do that, but actually we want to do it this way. So what they're doing is basically, you sort of go, are you a best of breed? And they go, no, we're kind of a bit of both. We're a suite and best of breed kind of company. And I think that's what most companies, they may not achieve it, but that's kind of the philosophy of thinking these days from companies who've been through, 2 or 3 generations of CRM. That's how they're kind of trying to think about it. I'm not saying they're going to succeed. I'm just saying that's kind of the way of thinking about it. And it's not a bad way of thinking, even if you don't get there.
Well, I mean, it actually provides the, ultimately, even if you're not a best of breed believer, you're going to get a very good technology to help you with what you've got to do. Yeah. But that, of course, begs the integration point too, which is how easy or hard is it going to be to do that?
It's now all focused on integration. Well, I give them an example. I said, what about, give me examples. They give me examples. Sprinkler, we're using Sprinkler. And I went, so you're not using the Salesforce stuff? And they went, nah. They said, we have our sales social marketing guys that look at that and went, nah, they haven't done much with it. Hasn't gone very far. We're not impressed. Yeah, it's integrated. Sprinkler's better. We're using that. So you sort of go, okay, that makes sense. That's and then you got to integrate it. But they're happy doing the integration work. That's the deal. So they have to integrate. But then they said, if we choose to move away from Sprinkler, got a decision at some point, we'll do that. We'll switch. If the social marketing team want to switch, because we can't tell them what to do. Or another data point, which it's a piece of research Gartner hasn't published yet, but I think it's quite powerful. And they were looking at the term they're using is business technologists. But what it was doing was a huge study, like 17,000 companies or something.
Wow.
A proper decent-sized scale study. We don't do huge ones. Oh, there we go. Who are you? So anyway, I won't say who it is. But anyway, this big study, what they were looking at was people who are not in IT who do tech things. And i.e. coding, integration, analytics, Power BI reports, all that kind of stuff. And what they found was they said, well, we're thinking that might be like the same size as the IT department. No, it's like 4 times bigger. It's 4 times bigger. So it's like 40% of non-IT people are doing this stuff. And so then there was a couple of interesting surprises. One was that huge numbers of people doing a range of different things. They were listing all the different things they're doing. Some are actually almost like full-time tech people outside of IT, paid for by various departments like finance and things, or sales. That's sales forecasting. You become this quite detailed techie, actually, if you've got some specific tech in that space. But then there's a lot of people just doing it a bit part-time, probably a bit like us. They're doing bits and pieces and configuring things and building things. But you wouldn't say you're a technologist, but you're kind of, well, I'm doing stuff. So anyway, large numbers of them. And then, of course, what are they buying? Well, they're not buying Salesforce. That's the official system. What they're doing is buying all this stuff. They're going, I need something that does, surveys, or I need something that does some analysis of customer feedback or something, or I need social marketing. So they're buying these tools and doing stuff with them. But the real surprise in the study was, of course, they went, oh, well, these are the old citizen developers, aren't they? So they must hate IT, and IT must hate them. No, they get on really well with IT. because IT is doing all this agile stuff, and they're going, "You're in part of the agile team." So what they're doing is all roping each other together and working together quite well. So the surprise was like 80+%. We've got a pretty good working relationship with IT. They know us, we know them, we know what they do, we know what we do. We get on okay. They help us out a bit, we help them out a bit. So you sort of go, it's not the good story of, look at the conflict. Not that much conflict, actually. Not perceived to be conflict. Maybe the IT guys think it's conflict, but the non-IT guys are not really seeing a conflict there now. But it's interesting. But I'd say that those guys, remember the first time we went to Dreamforce, first time we went there, I remember going, where's all the IT people? And it was like, where's the normal IT conference? And that people were there. It was those business technologist people. That was Salesforce's original audience. And turns out there's a ton more of them out there now.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of them are they know a bit about Salesforce, but they're also doing all this other stuff. They're getting hold of all these App Exchange partners and doing stuff with it. So I think that's what's feeding all this. Twilio, what were they up like 55% last year? Shopify up now 3 billion.
They're killing it.
Yeah, Shopify.
Hey,
sorry.
We're talking. No, this has been great. We talked about a lot of technologies that are creating a lot of data, a lot of digital data. Where's privacy coming into your conversations around CX?
Actually, it's quite serious now. Well, you guys have all added all your state laws, so now it's suddenly got a lot more serious. GDPR and well, actually, it's all the number of other countries. You start going around the world. You start doing pictures of the world. How many countries have got a variant of GDPR? It's just tons of them. I think I'll give you an example of why this stuff matters. So I'm talking to a company the other day, and they said the GDPR has been out 3 years or something, and this is a US headquartered company, but it's got a European business I'm talking to. And they said, we weren't being taken very seriously back in HQ in the US, but now this has hit us, and the laws have been passed in California in places. They're starting to take it a bit more seriously now. We're having like lots of chat with lawyers, and they said, but everyone's going, but it's just pay the fine. I mean, what the hell? It's probably not that big a deal. So anyway, so I'm chatting away, and I said they said, I said, what's changed their minds? They said, well, we had a customer who said, I would like to exert my rights. I would like to have everything you have on me sent to me. And I've been a customer 25 years. So they start digging through, and they go back and say, we have 3 million records with this customer in somewhere through communications and things. Big business customer, 3 million records. Wow. So they go, okay, we've got to get it and give it to the customer. So they try some lawyers about, no, we don't want to do that. And lawyers say, you've got to do it. So they dig through this stuff, and they go, now we had to redact it because some of the stuff can't be shared. We need to redact it. So I said, what's that costing? I said, well, I had to get a special law firm in with special tools to do this. And I said, what are we talking about? I said, well, we spent $35,000 so far just redacting it, getting it ready, and then sending it to them. And they can come back and ask more questions. So you go 35,000 times every customer. How much is that going to cost? To just deal with that's just a standard service. That's a standard access request. I just like all my data, please. Well, I have the right to be forgotten. Please delete everything and prove you've deleted it all. These are powerful rights. So what it means from a CX standpoint, a CRM standpoint, is like, do you really need that data? Because when we're going to load it in the new system, do we really need it? Because before you just say, shove it all across, clean it up a bit, shove it across, and off we go. But now you're going, do we need that stuff? Because if it's wrong, or maybe we can get rid of it and say, sorry, we got rid of that when we migrated. And we're allowed to do that. There's regulations that mean we've got to protect some of it, other regulations. So it's having an effect, yeah. I think people have misunderstood. You're not going to get killed by being prosecuted by the regulator. You're going to get killed because of each and every request you have to deal with if you don't have a system for dealing with this stuff or have a process for managing your data. So suddenly it's put a cost on customer data, basically, and employee data, which is even worse. It's even more problematic.
So one last question for you, okay? During the COVID, well, no, this luckily because you're in the UK, you're not going to get our actual last question, which is what American football teams do you root for? Right. And as long as we'll give you the answer. As long as you don't say you root for
New York.
No, as long as you don't say you root for the New England Patriots, you will be welcome back to the show. If you said you rooted for the Patriots, no matter how great the show was, and it was great, you wouldn't be welcome back anyway.
Well, luckily, see, he's in the UK,
Right,
so
that's what I'm
the
saying,
UK,
so-
they're not going to want the Patriots. They're going to root against the
That's
Patriots.
the Patriots.
Right. That's thanks to what's his name? The also the Red Sox owner who owns Arsenal. I think he owns Arsenal.
Yeah, I think it's
Right?
one of those. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to say. So what,
Probably
during the
nice,
pandemic, what did you do for like relaxation or enjoyment or fun, or did you play an instrument, join a band? What did you do, a virtual band, during the pandemic when you were locked at home? What did you actually do?
I did a lot of running. Got better at running actually. I injured myself a few times, but no. One of the things I did was I did things like I made a list of the the IMDb top 250 movies and said, right, I'm just going to watch them all.
Whoa.
How many of you watched the top IMDb top 250? They're all good films. So I haven't done them all. I've got to do about maybe 200 of them. But there's a lot of good films out there to watch. So I recommend doing that.
Okay,
All right. So what's your favorite? You got to tell us what your favorite movie of those were.
Oh, the top one on that list is Shawshank Redemption. So that's always number one. It's been number one on IMDb for like 15 years. It's always a great film. So
was that your favorite of the 200
Yeah,
you watched?
What was my favorite? That's a good question.
Of the 200 that you saw?
I think I like Japanese stuff. So I like Seven Samurai and those kind of stuff. All the great.
Awesome.
You're a Kurosawa guy.
Kurosawa.
Yeah. I think I'd probably pick one of his. I don't know which one because there's too many good ones. Ikuru's a good one, but that's a bit depressing. Dying of cancer, but still a great film. So anyway, but the bottom line, yeah, I'd probably pick a Japanese Ikuru Kurosawa one. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, I like
actually, there are a few like closeout things. We got like somebody, Clint Oram, Clint, of course. He asked he wanted to get the name of the
strategy book.
Oh, strategy book. It's called The Essence of Strategy by Dave Aaron.
Dave Aaron. And how do we get your Essence of CX Strategy?
That's just a paper I wrote for Gartner Research. It's just called The Essence of CX Strategy. Yeah. You've got access to Gartner.
Is it publicly available? Is it a client paper only? What?
Yeah, it's a client paper only. But it's still get the book. Get the book. It's better.
All right.
And the book's not okay. It's like $5 or $10 or something, and it's really good.
All right.
It saved you a ton of time. I read it in 1 hour.
Okay.
Wow.
Perfect reading.
By the way, Sheila Daly says hello. Great to see you.
Yeah. I know Sheila very well.
So Sven Esser wants to invite you to our happier hours. So what the CRM Playaz do is every Wednesday, well, it's a little late your time, but every Wednesday at 3:30 p.m. for about an hour, we just get 20 of us together as other analysts. There are C-level execs, there are students at university, there are professors at universities, just a mixed bag of people across the industry get together every Wednesday to just shoot the breeze. And the only and we call them the CRM Playaz Place Bar and Not Grill Happier Hours. Right. Happier hours.
That's a mouthful, but it involves drink. Sounds good.
It can. It definitely can. And the discussions range from does employee engagement really impact customer engagement to what's your favorite 70s movies? Right. And then it will be at some point a discussion about bagels somewhere.
Yeah, you gotta warn them about that.
I love bagels.
I'll tell you what. If you actually show up at the happy hour, if you show up at the happy hour, I will literally ship to the UK.
The real bagels,
the best bagels in the world. Literally the best bagels in the world. I promise you.
I'm way outside London, so I don't get good bagels here. North London's a place for good bagels around here.
Nah, ultimately you have to go to New York, right? Pretty much it. But you can get it through Goldbelly. Goldbelly is where you get it, really. Go to goldbelly.com and take a look. You'll see all that Essa Bagel, H&H Bagels. Goldbelly is the place you go where you get the most. If you're a foodie at all, you can get all these great like comfort level kind of foods like bagels and cakes and you would love it. It's pretty reasonable too. So, but
I am an omnivore. I literally I'll eat anything. I've eaten all the weird things that kill you in Japan and stuff. It's love all that stuff. So anything I'll eat, pretty much anything. Yeah.
Next time I see you in person.
Wait a minute. So I got to ask, would you eat a blueberry bagel?
Yeah, I'd eat a blueberry bagel. Is that a bad?
Have you ever? Wait. Let me.
I've never had one. From my perspective, I've had one.
I like
it. Okay, you've never had one. Okay, that's the only reason you would say yes. You would. Okay,
I don't know what it's like.
Don't worry.
I assume that's a bad thing.
I
Well,
love them, but that's another story.
let's put it
altogether.
this way. If no self-respecting member of the tribe would touch one, not the Greenberg tribe, the Jewish
broader
tribe,
Jewish
right?
tribe,
The broader tribe would
whole-
touch one.
The whole,
They wouldn't even touch
whole
them.
religion would-
Actually, the Council of Orthodox Rabbis would expel you from Judaism.
Wow. Jeez. It's
Love it.
come to that, Ed. It's
That's
come
how
to
bad
Yes,
it
it
is.
has. They are that bad. They are that bad. So I'll send you the details on the happy
Okay,
hour. You're
I'll do
welcome
it.
to join us. I think you'll have a good time.
I'll have a good time.
And-
Probably 70s
and-
movies and custom experience. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So
Amazing.
Brent, I'll leave the rest to you, Mr. Bleary. Take it away.
No, it's been great having you on, man. And we definitely want to have you back again, especially since you're not a Patriots fan, so you fit right in.
Thank I'm
And we'll talk about we'll talk about one of the movies that you watched in a little bit further detail. So we'll
okay.
we'll
I'll
do
pick
that.
one.
Next one.
I'll go and have
Yeah.
a
Think about it for the next time around.
Okay, I read a
Oh,
lot as
man.
well. I read about 40 books last year. So
Oh.
about 40 book a year. By the way, here's a question to think about as I leave, which is how many books are you going to read before you die?
Whoa,
Well, that's a morbid question. I'm
It's a morbid
71,
question.
dude.
What it means
I'm
is
71.
yeah, but then you start to focus. When you start to calculate that number, and the other question is how many bottles of wine are you going to drink before you die? Once you know that, you start to buy and you read better books and you drink better wine. I can tell you.
Well, I drink Irish whiskey.
No unlimited. I did that calculation. I started thinking about it. So I'm now reading good stuff.
Well,
look at that. You're already getting people are already looking forward to you to joining the happier hour there.
I'll be there.
John McGinley. There you go.
Awesome.
All right, there it is. There it is. You
Awesome.
heard it.
So
Thank you, sir.
Ed,
You were
thanks again for
amazing,
joining
as
us, man. We know
always.
it's kind of late, but we definitely
Yeah,
appreciate
no
you hanging out.
I'll go get a beer. And a
And I'd
bagel.
have to
the
say,
best.
good product placement. The Gartner looks right over your shoulder. It looks really good there.
That's right.
Physical background. Right?
Yeah. All right. So on behalf of Ed Thompson, I'm Brent Leary.
I'm Paul Greenberg.
Thank you, Paul.
We are the CRM Players, and of course, we can never end a show without this. Oops, I almost did hit the wrong button. Without this.
Whoa.